Thank you for your permission to record. So today we have a community webinar focused on photo interviews with Bettina Kolb at the University of Vienna. What makes photo interviews so valuable? Next slide.
Yeah, I think we have a problem because I can't move it.
Can't move it?
No.
All right. Then that seems odd. Why don't I can turn on mine? Let me pause the recording for a second. So my name is Laura Lorenz, and I'm the founder and educator at Photo Voice Worldwide. We provide trainings in the photo voice and other related participatory visual methods. We create community through these community webinars, our blog, and so on. We do consulting, and we produce things like white papers, and we'll be soon publishing a couple of books we're excited about. Next slide, please. This is our tagline. We feel that showing stories means sharing power and often leads to changing lives. Next slide. And photo voice is a participatory visual method that asks people to represent their lives, point of view, and experience using photographs and narratives. This is a typical progress of the steps of photo voice. And this method was developed by Carolyn Wang and Marianne Burris in the 1990s. Thank you. Next slide.
This is my slide.
That's right, but I'm going to introduce you. So today we'll be focused on photo interviews, which is not a group process of participatory photography, but a one-on-one process. And next slide. A very important process. And I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Bettina Kolb from the University of Vienna and a member of the Visual Studies group in the Social Sciences group under the Faculty of Social Sciences. And Bettina and I met in 2006 at a conference of the European Qualitative Research Network in Cardiff, Wales. And we've published together, worked together, visited together. And it's just a great pleasure to welcome Bettina to speak today on photo interview. All right, Bettina, your turn.
Okay. Yes, thanks for the invitation, Laura. As you can see on my wonderful background, it's the first time I use it here. It's the University of Vienna. And, you know, good evening from Vienna. We here in Vienna, we have a visual study group, and since Laura and me, we met a long time ago, we have also a new publication with this visual study group, and Laura will put this in the chat as well, because it's a combination. We made an article from, you see the visuals here. We made an article about photo interview and photo voice, engaging research participants, empowering voice, and generating knowledge for change. And as we learned with COVID-19 to have a lot of online lecturing, so that was the reason for, I said, okay, we can do this. But as you can hear in my English, I'm German speaking, and it's really a different situation talking in this English language. So I apologize for, yes, for some reasons. Yes, photo interview. I have done photo interview, as you can see on my background, in the University of Vienna. I studied myself on the University of Vienna, and I had a nice professor who once did for one single semester a lecture about visual sociology. And I thought, okay, I would like to be a visual sociologist. And I made my master thesis with the photo interview method, and I made my PhD. And then I met Heidi Dumreicher from Equitable, which is an NGO, and she did a lot of research in different countries. So my examples also are coming from China or Arab countries or Mexico. You have just seen the coyote. That was an aesthetic fruit. You have already seen them, and yeah, that was a very interesting thing, applying photo interview in different countries. And always from 2006 on, we had this reflection with Laura together to discuss what we are doing, what is photo voice, what is photo interview. And this was a good opportunity to think about the method. And one of the methods is the basic idea of this speech, of this talk. So, and yeah, I would like to introduce a little bit the visual methods, as I'm a social scientist and I'm a sociologist, so I'm not aware what is your background. But in ethnography, visual methods are established and used, and not so in sociology, where I started my studies. And there is one different thing. In ethnography, photos are taken by the researcher. So for documentation, to show reality, to present new or unknown phenomena, or to discuss photos taken or selected by the researcher, and this is called photo elicitation. And Harper Douglas was a sociologist and was, for the visual sociology, an important pioneer. But he took the photos of himself and studied a man living in the desert and having a mechanic company, and he was studying how he was learning and how his capacity building was done. So for the visual sociology, this was an important step. But participatory photo interview, this is the method I used and I was started to reflect on, is a method of visual sociology where participants take the photos. So not the researcher takes the photos, but the participants themselves. And these photos are discussed in an interview. There is also someone else on his shoulders. I started my work. He's Ulf Wuggening. He's a Swiss sociologist, and he also took. Made a little study with participatory photo interview, and then he left the visual sociology again. But he was one important, at least for the German-speaking community, he introduced the term Fotobefragung. That what we say photo interview. Here you can see two photos from China. That was 2002. You can see it's not digital. It's at least it was disposable camera we were using. And people from the villages, we have done an interdisciplinary project. So photo interview was in the context of other different disciplines: natural science, architecture, social science, economy. And we studied the sustainable development and the potential of sustainable development in China. That was 2002. And here is the citation from the article from 2008. 2006, I met Laura because I was hungry for the world, let's say. So I tried to look out who is doing similar things like myself. And my professor said, yes, go on and look what you find. And then I found this, this conference 2006. And Laura was helping me. I think you started the conference and I finished the conference. Yeah, and then she wanted to, she said, okay, what we are doing, what can we do? And she gave me a very supportive help for my first English article. And this article is the FQS article, and it was the first starting the reflection of what is the participatory photo interview and what are the potentials of photo interview. And this is FQS is German speaking, but it's also German, and sometimes it's English, and sometimes it's in Spanish. So there is it was starting in Berlin, and it was one of the first online open office. Now open. What is the? Yeah,
you mean open access?
Open access, yes, I mean open access. It was one of the first open access articles, and that is what I was very happy about it, that we made a conference 2008 in Berlin, and from this on there was this this publication. So there were a lot more of visual, not sociologists, but also visual scientists presenting their approaches, and I was invited. So I was invited to present the participatory photo interview, and from that on, Laura helped me with the publication, and this is, let's say, a basic thing for participatory photo interview. And with the open access, I'm very happy that everyone can read it, and also students in Vienna can get it very easy. Although they like to read the German articles a little bit more than the English articles.
And I've put the FQS, the link to your paper in the chat.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, after this,
what's next
session, you maybe have interest to go in this publication, because it's also a little more detailed than here on the slides. The participatory photo interview is a holistic approach to the world, so it's important for sociologists who are trained to work with narratives and words. So we have both of them, and we learn a lot that visuals and words, they add their approaches, and it's very interesting to work with both of them. It's a tool for documentation. You can see on the left side a photo from a hammam project we had a project about the Islamic path and the sustainable development and renovation of the Islamic path, the Hammam. And what people brought were not only the baths, but also the surrounding and the neighborhood from this. And this was showing the neighborhood. It's a tool for documentation, and it's a valuable tool because participants can add their view on the world or on a specific topic to the researchers' view. And that's the valuable thing. It's easy to add their perspective with a photo. It's easier than with an with an interview, because photos can be a starting point. And it's a participatory activity and can strengthen empowerment. So in all our projects we tried to work in a participatory way. So the photo interview was one tool to bring in this participation, this empowerment. And also it was an activating people to follow a process, to be part of a process, an interdisciplinary process. And it was photo interview was part of this participatory perspective. And in that sense, it started a process and creates a bridge between disciplines. So also the participation as a discipline needs a bridge to the other disciplines. It needs the bridge between the disciplines, and photos are a very good tool to do this, because photos are starting a reflection process and stimulates a participant's memory. So this is a focal point when the researcher is asking for, in this left photo you can see, we were asking children because they wanted to be part of the project. And they said, we wanted to be part of the project and we can also use a camera. And they came back with photos like this on the left side. And it was a 12-year-old girl. And she said, why are people, this is a bed, let's say, from a homeless people. And she said, why are people have to sleep on the street here? And this was not in the interest of the researcher, because we were studying the hammam as a bath, but it was in the interest of the people living close to this bath. And the bath also, the Islamic bath was also a part of a hotel. So very, very long time ago, people, and in Cairo, in this hammam, they were really in this hammam also sleeping for the night. And it was a topic what is also connected. We found out as a researcher that is also connected with the hammam, although we cannot understand it in a first approach. But the important thing is that the participants start to think about our topic or the researcher's topic, and this is a process. And this is in the social science, it's very interesting because other tools of applying social science are very on the moment. So there is not a reflection. So there is not a starting and discussing and thinking and reflected. And this photo interview method gives people time to integrate question, to start to think about, and then to find a photo. And as this is a process, this is, I think, a very valuable thing is a potential in this method. The photos stimulate the interview. So, and when we are in the interview now, the photos can stimulate the situation. We also have experience now. So if it's a long time ago, or we study for COVID-19 experience now with students, and the photos bring up this topic and helps to stimulate the interview. So people are looking on the photos and they are in this situation. Also the historic, the visual oral history or visual history, they integrate photos because they know the potential of the photos. And if you look at a photo, you are in that time. You remember that time. You can shift your time, and you can go into this time again. So photo becomes something for the researcher and participant to discuss. This is in the interview. So both are looking at the photos, and the young lady from Cairo told me what is her expression, what is her thinking to the photo. And after this long time, I know exactly what she told me. So as a researcher, you can learn from the participants, and it's also, as it is a holistic approach, you can remember after 12 years, you can, or more than 12 years, one can remember the situation while looking into the photo. Also, the photo supports the exchange and creates a common knowledge that's for a specific situation very valuable. That we learned a lot about the hammam, for example, although we have looked a lot in the neighborhood of the hammam. So when I was reflecting the process of these two very intensive projects in China and in the Arabic world, I started to work on the FQS article and was thinking about what is happening in a photo interview. What is happening in the photo interview. And I found out that I could find 4 phases, and this is the opening phase, and the active photo taking phase, the photo interview as the interview, and the analytical scientific interpretation. In the opening phase, there starts a cognitive process on the part of the respondents as they reflect on the influence or meaningfulness of the scientific question for their own life concepts and experience. We discussed this already. And the opening phase starts the dialogue between researcher and participant. The researcher has to explain what is the aim of this research, what should be the study on, and the participants are invited to contribute. That's the participatory process. So they are not only asked about the feeling or a situation, the reflection of a situation, they are really basic, they can be basic, give basic information about the process or a situation. And then the photo taking phase starts. In the second or active photo shooting phase, participants implement their reflection by taking photos. So the people have their camera, and as we learned a lot in the last time, they also like to make digital photos or mobile photos. As we started with disposable cameras, sometimes it's also used the disposable camera in Vienna, in Austria, for weddings. It's very modern to do this. But yeah, we have the people also, some people say, I want to use my own camera, I want to use my own phone, and that starts the photo taking phase, and respondents take photos of specific subjects in their social or material surroundings. For example, we saw already places, buildings, people, social networks, local activities, and businesses that relate to the research question. And what is important, things that are meaningful for them. So that is the key point. So the participants have a defined time to take the photos immediately on the spot. That was also Wuggening concepts we talked about. He was going into the apartments, discussing about living habits. Or we found out some people they want to have a longer time, at least several days or even 2 weeks before bringing the photos back to the researcher. So the participants decide what is meaningful to them, and the researcher, and that's very important on this point, they do not control the respondents or influence them, because the people do what they want. So they can really follow their ideas and are not controlled by the researcher. So the respondents take photos that reflect the situation in life, describe social activities or social life, friends, spatial situations, houses, neighborhoods. Here we have a photo from a street that was in Mexico, and we have learned also about Mexico that it was a question of safety to be on the street, also for women, which were our participants here. So there is, at least if a photo looks like it's very normal or a very a very normal situation, it can be a deep insight or a deep message what is brought from the participants to the researcher. The third phase, Laura, you want me to make a break?
Not at all. I was just going to say, I think the word you were looking for is unremarkable.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yes, you're welcome.
So that was my English. Yeah, in the third phase, this is a decoding phase. So if you look into the interview, the participants themselves look at their photos and consider their photos and verbalize their thinking in an interview with a researcher. And when desired or culturally appropriate, in collaboration with other participants also. So here is the common thing between photo voice and photo interview. In the photo interview, the participant is with the researcher and not at all, not in the group, but it's also possible. It could be also in the group. But the key point is participants explain the meaning of the photo. So they look at the photo and say, what I wanted to express was this, or I was looking how I could find something what is expressing my feelings, or I was hunting this photo. So it's the key point when the participant explains what he or she thinks is on the photo. And what we can learn from it is that there are situations where people do not see some things on the photo, what the researcher is looking at, or what. So that's the interesting thing with visuals, that you can see what is on the photo. Maybe if there is not expression of from this, or you would not mention it, what is on the photos. So if desired in the interview, both can exchange their perspective and discuss them, but it's not necessary. So that's the potential of a photo interview. You can make also an interview and the photo stimulate the interview. So here we can see a photo interview with children in the Hammam project in Ankara. And the interviewer and the interviewee reflect on the photos during the interview, and they could produce a common knowledge and experience. That's for participatory activity. That's important, that the researcher can follow the perspective of the participants, and the researcher can also learn from the participants and learn and establish a common knowledge. So the coding phase is the first interpretation of the photographs by the photographer, support respondents in their role as experts. This is an important point because the people are, the participants are not only participants, they are really experts from their life, from the situation. So this is enables a learning process for researchers and respondents. That's inside a qualitative approach. And if there is a participatory activity, it's important that there is trust and dialogue between researcher and respondent. And it leads to an equal dialogue and exchange. We often learned in the Asian countries that the researcher says, you cannot ask this, they don't know this. And we said, okay, we will learn from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Bettina, I wanted to point out that in the chat, someone is mentioning that he's in his counseling work, his patients uncover early childhood memories in using photos in individual counseling and group counseling.
yeah, that's I think the photo, the potential of the photo, that was for remembering what has happened, and the photo can give you an potential for this. And also it's the photo is an expression of the latent aspects. So because the technique is an emotional approach, you can go into a situation with an emotion, and then you can use this technical approach for a situation, and that brings up maybe also latent aspects of the situation. Yeah, thanks for the comments. So we have steps of the interview. That's a little bit more practical. So we say 5 to 10 photos, and also there are practical things helping us give the photo a title. So if you invite people giving the photo a title, there is the key point, or the key Botschaft.
The key focus or starting point.
Key focus, yes. This is my sister. Why did you take this photo? That helps the respondent for coming into a talk, let's say. Why did you take this picture? Give us its meaning, and please explain one photo after the others are looked at, and the photo respondent explain why she took the photos. If you look at 10 or 20 photos, with the digital camera, it's more. So we saw the photo of the Hanoi study, when people my researcher colleague, she was a little bit overloaded when the people came back with 100 photos on the on the digital camera, because they were so happy to have digital camera and took a lot of photos. And then you have to decide with the people with what is an important photo, what you want to talk about. And this gives, this is in some situation a little bit more complicated than one expect. On the other hand, we have experience with our students. They tell them, bring back 5 photos, maximum 10 photos. So they are more, the people do not bring as much photos. So then it's easier, because if you look at the photo and you want to talk about the photo, this can be a longer process and take some time to do this. And in addition, if you are on a study, you don't want to lose your research question, you can prepare an interview guide. So this is also possible then to integrate this, and it's not so an easy task, because you have to integrate the photos on the one hand, the talk with the research with the participant, and then the research question you have. And if there is some of the research questions are often answered with the photos, but some not. So it's a good thing to have an interview guide, and you have to look at the guide and think about what is in the interview already spoken. But it's a good thing that the researcher owns his interview in a way, because otherwise people bring in a lot of topics, and on the end you are not sure if you have heard everything you wanted. So, and in the final thing, there is the empirical material. So you have words and photos and transcripts. And in this phase, the researcher is analyzing the data. So the researcher looks at the photos, looks in the interview, looks in the transcripts, and is starting to interpret, to give an analyze. And this can be done in different ways, because it's visual and it's textual material, and it can be analyzed with scientific interpretation tools. There are some of them based on qualitative social science interpretation methods. And I started to point out some of the aspects in the article, and I tried always to look into the potential of the photo and of the text. And I have brought a little example. So the photo material, as both visual and narrative material, and you can use different forms of interpretation methods. The question is how it combines with the research question. And the photo material you can use also in different interpretations. You can use the documentation. If you follow, let's say, the walk with the photo camera, then you could analyze the neighborhood. You can also find out about the social activity. We had in Cairo, we had one photo interview, which was really one neighbor, the next neighbor, the next neighbor. This was really interesting. So we learned a lot about the neighborhood and the social relations. So there were always portrait photos. But you can also use the photo for a hermeneutical photo interpretation. There are also tools of interpretation tools to analyze the photo itself without any comments of the participants. I mean, this is not the focus, that is not the priority of a photo interview, because in the photo interview we have photo and narration. But I think there is a little bit, you have to think about that the photo, which is a visual thing, you have to explain a little bit what you as a researcher see on this photo, so that anyone else can follow your ideas or your interpretation. So there is a little bit of describing the photo necessary. In the social science context, I mean, this is maybe also, this we also have to mention here, that is not the participatory aspect which is important. It's here on the photo, the scientific approach, so that you want to have results also for your research question on a specific point. And this is interesting. There is a potential in the photo, but if you use a visual material, you also have to describe a little bit what you see on a photo. And this is an example. The photo shows the courtyard of a house. The front shows a fontaine, which is white and could be made of marble. In the background, one can see the wall of the building with a mirror in the center. On the right side of the building, there's a corner. There are two windows in the vertical line and two windows in the horizontal. So if I want to mention that there is a marble fontaine here, and this is maybe a sign of luxury, then I have to explain that I understand this within the photo description. So I think this is the key point, that if I do an interpretation like this is a very beautiful house and there is a luxury marble fontaine in the very in the front of the photo, and this is important, this shows the importance, then I have to mention it, that I see it, because this is for the research and very necessary basic thing, that one can follow the analyzing in a scientific context. So, and then the interview is recorded and described. And she said, I think it was a woman, this is our house. I think it is the best thing in our neighborhood. So I took this photo to show that some of the houses, not all the houses in the neighborhood are like this. So I took this photo to show that some of the houses, not all the houses in the neighborhood are like this. And here is, I think, in this paragraph, we have to think about that this is social science, that it must be recorded and described, that is an interview. And from this point, as a text, I can do an interpretation and I can follow the verbal text, the words, and the participant talks about the photo and points out the personal function and the value of this place. This is our house. So we learned a lot if the people are, so photo interview is a very good tool for place-oriented reflection and studies. So this is our house. So because the photo interview, the photo connects the emotional, view with the spatial situation. So it connects our house with the courtyard we have seen on the photo. And then she says, I think it's the best thing in our neighborhood. So she points out that it's a valuable place for her. And then it's the paragraph shows that there is a connection between the resident and the places outside our house and our neighborhood. So we can learn from this little paragraph that there is a difference between our house and our neighborhood, that there is a distinction on this. And we see that there is not only a distinction, it's also a comparison, because not all houses are like this. So she says that she has a better house than other neighbors. And if we look at the beautiful photo, we can follow this, this narration. So this is an example for interpretation, but not the end, because you can use a lot of methods to work with the visual and the narrative material. And this is just a suggestion for doing this. And thanks for your attention. I lost the time. Okay, but we are in the time.
Yes. And I want to thank you, Bettina. That was fascinating. And there an interesting comment from Natalie. She used a process called photo dialogue with people with dementia and youth in elderly homes, and worked as an art and photo therapist and teacher. So
yeah, great. I think that's also a potential of this. I mean, I looked at it and found out, I designed that there are 4 phases, but I mean, there is different phases, and one can make it maybe more dialogue, more equal dialogue if you work with an album, for example, or so there is a lot of potential if you have different you point out different situations. So that's interesting. Yeah.
yes, we invite any questions. Thank you so much for being here, and pose questions or comments in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand, and we're happy to call on you to speak.
I apologize that only 5 minutes are left for questions. Sorry.
No worries. People have been posing some things in the chat too, so. And you've been using these methods also for teaching students who are studying visual sociology. They, in your classes, they actually do a photo interview project, correct? And then report on it, do a poster, and have kind of a sharing that way, I believe.
Yeah, and what we found out that we had different experience, but I mean, I'm very surprised that people really like to share with the photos. So that's also, at least everyone has photos now. It's also a good thing to work with photos. So
Yes. And a way to remember. That's
Yeah,
right.
in this situation with the COVID-19, we have photos from the COVID-19 campaign, and they look back into in this situation on the one hand, and in the other, the people took photos from this situation, so they went back to the time, some of them, and brought photos from that time or make new photos. So that was also a new situation. And talk about what is the difference from before COVID-19 and after COVID-19.
Yes. Well, I think we're near time, and I appreciate so much that you've taken the time to be here with us, Bettina, today and share your wealth of knowledge and expertise of this photo interview method, its background, its steps, and some examples of the results. And all the way from the very beginning, presenting, conceptualizing, through interpretation. So we will be sharing the slides with everyone who has participated today. We'll send those out probably in the next day or two, as well as a link to the YouTube channel recording. So thank you very much, Bettina. Thank you all. And we look forward to continued contact. Please follow us, Photo Voice Worldwide, on LinkedIn and Twitter and other social media platforms. We welcome you to our community if you're interested in staying in touch and finding out about other opportunities like our webinar blog and courses and so on. So thank you for being here today. And thank you, Bettina, for sharing all this wealth of knowledge.
Thank you for inviting.
All right. So we'll stay on for a few minutes if anybody would like to raise a question or speak with us. But otherwise, please, we look forward to seeing you the next time.
Hi.
Pauline.
Hi. I'm very interested in this. Can you explain this from perhaps a photographer point of view?
Bettina, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I mean, there are some photographer projects where people participate to point out their situation. And if you talk about the photos, you maybe can add an interview, or you can add some story from the focus of participants. So
yes.
You mean to work with you mean as a photographer to work with a subject, or to work with someone?
An individual? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Another option is, if you wanted to learn more about their situation, to understand better what they might want photographs of, you could, for example, ask them to take some photographs first to share with you, talk about their meaning. And then if you were developing a specific project with them, you would have a better grasp of what matters to them, what is meaningful to them. Now, one thing I want to caution is this idea of the ethics of it. So the ethics of asking people to take photos and share them with you means also, sharing with them certain guidelines, like no illegal activities, maybe be careful about taking photos of people, perhaps take them in a way that doesn't necessarily show their faces or make them recognizable. It can be very important first to talk about that. I know in projects that Bettina has done in the Arabic world, around the Mediterranean, around those baths, in some countries, it could be considered quite risky to take photos and talk about them with someone outside that country, Morocco, for example. So, you know, to be clear about the ethics of being a researcher of your own life and sharing photos, you know, it is an important step in the first session.
Right. It's very interesting to me.
Yes. It makes for a different type of exchange and dialogue, as Bettina's been pointing out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for sharing. And it's something that I would love to, as a photographer, get involved with. And I don't know where or how to take those kind of first steps.
Well, stay in touch, send an email. You know, we're happy to start a dialogue. We like to help support people in their own, you know, journeys or learning. So please just be in touch. Happy to continue this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. I'll put in the chat, a good way to reach out to us at Photo Voice Worldwide is that, or you can reach us at this one too. Team.
Okay.
Yes. So to continue this conversation, if you like. And then Bettina's address, I'll put this in. It's
Wonderful.
univ.at.ac. Is that right, Bettina?
I can do this. I'm sorry, it's on the slides, but
Yes.
not here.
Good. Oh, AC first. Okay. So I'll stop the recording now, but we can